Madame?
So, by that definition, it's the reverse truth. If something has utility, is it not by definition art then?
It's not a what?
If something actually has utilitarian purpose, would you not call that art if it was beautiful or?
Yeah, but I think that there's, in some ways, these are sort of categorical anxieties. There is artistic elements into almost anything we do. There are aesthetic felicities in so much that what we would consider craft, that what we would consider things that are not artistic. Yeah. So it's not as if we can divide this stuff. You know, we can divide this stuff so cleanly. Yeah. There's many, many impulses which have beneath them sort of creativity at their heart. Creativity is in a lot of the things we do. But when we talk about art as it has been historically formulated, art is that thing which governments try to give no money to. So, you know, I mean, I don't mind thinking about the way that art intersects with all sorts of life, but I also want to remember that there has been historically an artistic practice that it lays outside of the civic, social, economic demands of any given society. You know? I mean, think about it. What profession has as its kind of primary fulcrum transgression? What profession is rewarded for failure? I mean, that's the point of play. That's the point of art. That you're supposed to fail. I can't fail as a teacher. Fail as a doctor. You're not going to be given rewards. But fail as an artist and you become a greater artist. And so in this way I think we can identify play as slightly different from perhaps some of the other things that are going on. You know? I mean, I've never been able to write anything if it hadn't been for all my catastrophic failures. A couple more. Yeah? There's a hand all the way in the back. Thank you. Let me try to repeat the question. In Oscar Wilde, there's this sort of dialectic, us Marxists would say. You know, there's this sort of relationship for the rest of you. There's this relationship between the sort of micro-personal story of Oscar, of this kind of fat, nerdy kid, and the larger national story. Yeah? And how do these two things intersect? How do they play out? Is that a fair sort of... Yeah. Well, one of the things, if you guys are as obsessed with stories as I am, you're always looking for shortcuts that allow you to toggle back and forth between a personal story and a national story. And there are a few techniques that have traditionally allowed you to do this. The Bible is a great source of these kind of strategies. Yeah? And I'm not just saying this because I'm kind of a lapsed Catholic. I'm saying this because of the rhetoric that's found in the Bible is especially useful. Yeah? Because the Bible often makes individual arguments and abstracts them to the level of the chosen. Yeah? So whatever Lot's going through, this somehow speaks to the larger Christian nation. And one of the most useful stories that has allowed people to understand the larger forces of history at an individual level is the curse. The curse interacts with individuals, but speaks to a larger question of history. Yeah? Adam and Eve get cursed as individuals for a larger historical thing. Yeah? They crossed, they transgressed against God's sort of line. We see this as well with the Hellenistic cultures, with the Greeks. Yeah? The cursed house of Atreus, where the curse of the house affects these individuals, but connects these individuals to a much larger historical movement, a much larger historical context. So I knew that if I wanted to somehow personalize the history of the Dominican Republic, that a curse is exceptionally useful for bridging the larger pattern of history and making it very personal. If I say to you that Oscar, this poor little nerd, his problem with dating has to do with the sort of historical impact of the rape culture of the Trujillato, and this is the reason why Oscar's family has problems dating, you're kind of like, that's dull. It's sort of, it's not intuitive, it's not a good story, it feels like a weak argument. If I say Oscar's having a problem with love because his family's cursed, you're in. Even though we would say it's constituted of the same parts. And so I guess for me, when I was trying to bridge these two things, I sought shortcuts, and the shortcuts I found were in the sort of older, deeper stories that do this. Yeah? One more, and then we'll read. If I could be any writer besides myself, who would I be and why? So I guess the answer would probably be that young woman who is currently writing her book right now, and it's going to blow our goddamn minds, and we're going to read her for the next 20 generations. Yeah? But it's not just saying it to say it. I think in your heart, we're here not because we love the books that are, we're here because we love the books that are going to be. The promise of books is what keeps a book lover going to the bookstores. It's what keeps book lovers always looking and hearing and listening and reading, because their eyes are always on the horizon. You know? And so for me, I know that despite the way that we have fetishized and canonized literature, despite what they tell us about ethos, that the past is always better than the present, the best is yet to come. And anyone who's a book lover and a reader knows that in their heart. So now, not to be clever, now to go back to your question and answer it in a more practical way, yeah, I guess my thing is that there's some people who have written like a bunch of perfect novels. It's hard to write perfect books, yo. It's hard to write like 3 perfect books. And then when you think about writing 7 perfect books, it's kind of insane. So if I could be any writer, I would want to be Octavia Butler, because she wrote like 9 perfect novels. You know? I mean, if you haven't read Octavia Butler, run. I would recommend read Kindred. Just again, as a starter course, read Kindred. Kindred's nuts. It's like about a black woman living in the 70s who gets time traveled back to a plantation. She's like, oh shit, I'm a slave. You know? And I would read Kindred. I would read Dawn, which is a colossally important book, and I would read her short stories called The Blood Child and Other Stories. And you know, we don't usually think of science fiction as sort of black woman's territory, and yet she completely takes it. So I would say I would be her, because I dream. In my dreams, I dream of the first day I find her books in the library. I still dream her. Okay, so we'll take a break. I'm going to read a little bit, and then we'll take a few more questions.